Welcome to Public Comment. I'm John Dunbar, former mayor of Yountville.
And I'm Alfredo Pedroza, former Napa County supervisor.
This is where we talk about politics, people, and whatever else is on our mind.
Our immigrant community is part of this community. The fear is real. The threat is real.
The consequences of not taking action are going to go well beyond the immigrant community.
We need new solutions.
Alfredo, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, John, I think on today's agenda is immigration. And let me just be honest, this is a hard topic, right? It's real. People are living it right now in terms of what they hear in the news, from the federal to the state to local, to people seeing that, our local bodies of government are passing resolutions, around immigration. But for me, it's not enough. I'm tired of paper solutions. And let's be honest, you and I did that too as elected officials, but it's a different moment now. I think people are seeing fear and it's impacting their daily lives. And because of that, I think we need new action. So enough of the rezos and the town halls that are talking about this issue. We have to pivot to action.
And I agree 100%. And I worry that people are satisfied when they post on social media that they're just so upset and they go to a town hall or a government meeting and they speak, with passion, and then they go home and their white guilt is satisfied. I mean, really. So we need people that are willing to actually follow through. If this is really what they want, which is supporting our immigrant population who are members of our community, then let's see that action.
Look, and I appreciate you saying that because, I think it's hard to acknowledge sometimes, John, that guilt that we all have. But why is it different now? And to me, what's different is we know that this community couldn't work if it wasn't for our immigrant population. There's studies, right? We can reference a study that was done in 2012 that showed, in our ag workforce, over 75% are immigrants. And if you look at our lodging and you look at our restaurant and food, it's very similar, right? So this community is powered by immigrants, but the fear is real. The threat is real. And I also don't want to focus on what we can't control, right? Yes, there's some stuff happening at the federal level, but locally, we can do things differently. And I think today, I want to talk about what are some of those things that we can do, because we know there are solutions out there that could work. We're not going to solve it all, but I think there's meaningful stuff that are not about paper solutions and proclamations or what happens at the dais. It's what's happening in the community. Because right now, you and I came to our recording studio with no worry. Maybe if we were speeding or there's a cell phone, right, you might get pulled over, but that's it, right? We pay the citation, you go to traffic court, done. Well, for the person that might have to worry about whether they're going to get picked up, that's real. Whether they have kids in our schools, that's real. And for me, that's why the solutions have to be different now, right? And I think this community is capable of it as well.
Well, we can also acknowledge that our entire community here in Napa Valley was built on immigrants, literally physically built by immigrants. You talk about the city of Napa. Chinese laborers were the ones that were really the ones that built the city.
Yeah.
We see the rail lines. We see so many other parts of our infrastructure. Our history is from the investment, physical and otherwise, made by immigrants. We're all immigrants to a degree, right? So you don't have to go back very many generations to prove that it's more than just the 75 or so percent population today that are new immigrants. There is a history of that, which has also built up our entire heritage.
But I think back then it was solving a problem, right? There was labor shortage. You talked about the Chinese immigrants, Italian immigrants too. Right. One of the programs that gets a lot of buzz is the Bracero program, right, which was a program that passed in the 60s, 70s, right after World War II, where there was a labor shortage. So the federal government created a program where people could come to address the labor shortage. It was a defined problem. That's how my parents came with my grandparents, right? Today's solutions are harder. It's more complicated. It's more political. There's too much grandstanding going on, right? So that's why I say, don't forget the federal stuff. Keep an eye on it, but focus on what we can do locally, right? And one of the things I want to call out is, the One Napa Valley program that was funded through the Community Foundation. To me, that stands out because it created progress. It created outcomes. It took people that were potentially residents, eligible for citizenship, and it helped them become citizens. My mom was one of them. Like, that's real. Those people, while they may not be living in fear, there was still that concern of, am I legal? Am I not? And to provide them a pathway to citizenship is winning. And that's one. So if you're an employer, right, thinking about what you can do, learn about that. Ask, can you fund that? Can you support that? If you're that person that has done well in your life and you want to hold the sign to feel good, maybe learn about this. And how can you support that in a meaningful way? You can still go hold your sign up that says you support immigrants, but also create the action that's creating meaningful outcomes. And then to me, I think our employers, John, I think our employers have a big role to play, right? Not that we're picking on proclamations, but when I see proclamations, I question who's receiving that, who's the messenger, who's the audience of that. An employer who knows their workforce, who knows that their employees might be documented or not, their ability to say, I have your back, that means something. That person's going to go home feeling like their employer has their back. That person might feel a little bit better driving home. That person might feel a little bit better having dinner with their kids at the table because their employer's there with them, right? Those are the real things. So if you're an employer, think about that, right? What can you do differently to make sure the community knows, your employees know that you have their back? I think those are meaningful things. And then something that we can talk about is government's role around outreach. We have a history of going out into the community. I think we need to do that differently as well.
I'm glad you brought up government because I was about to. And a lot of people don't trust it, and whether it's local, national, whatever. So we can't count on government educating, and we can't count on government solving the concerns that people have about immigration and their status in this country. You're right. I think employers can take a large role because they know the people personally in some cases that we're talking about. We also, I think, need to rely on our nonprofit community that in some areas have already taken leadership positions on reaching out to our immigrant populations and providing services, whether it's healthcare, legal services, or whatever else they need. I think our faith-based community leaders can also play a pivotal role because they probably have a lot more trust than our government officials. When you have a town hall, it's well-intentioned, but look at the audience, right? I mean, you mentioned that. Who are they talking to? Is it just each other?
Yeah.
So that people could go home and feel like, yeah, we went to that town hall. But if that town hall then turns into action, funding programs that exist, creating real solutions for people that need to address their fears, then that's fine. But that's not often what government delivers.
I bet the town hall people look more like you than me. Right. And you can talk about the role that our nonprofits should play, the role that our faith-based organizations should play, but it's a question of what are we doing to empower them to do their work too? Right. So are we dedicating resources to that? Right. So, one of the things that we did differently during the pandemic, right? We didn't expect people to come to us. We went to them. Right. Myself and the ag commissioner, we went out to vineyards and we talked to our ag workforce about getting vaccinated, social distancing, and all those things. And we made people feel comfortable, right? We provided them direction of how to be informed of, we're doing social media videos on why it matters to get vaccinated, right? And we created this platform where they felt comfortable. I think we need to do that as well. And as elected officials, sometimes we have the itch. We have the itch to do something. Well, instead of writing this, the paragraphs of the proclamation, what about canvassing? What about going door to door with partners and saying, here's how to be informed? And here's what it means to be informed, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. Take the pavement, do something differently. Again, if this matters as much as we all say it is, then give it more than the 10 minutes at a town hall and a board meeting or a council meeting to do something differently. Because Napa does have the ingredients, John, I believe, to do things differently.
Well, I'll give you a perfect example that builds on what you just talked about during the pandemic. When Lydia and Mondavi, one of the iconic wine families in this valley, Rob and Lydia. But Lydia really took the initiative to say, what the county is doing is fine if you live in the city of Napa, basically. But people can't get to the resources that are being available. testing and vaccinations. So I worked with her, and we worked with former Calistoga Mayor Chris Canning, and we created a mobile delivery model where, now granted, the county was able to provide those resources and they partnered really well. You were a big part of that, where you had the testing, you had the vaccinations, you had the ability to deliver them literally to where the folks that needed it were living and working, mostly up valley. I could see a similar model where we're providing information, education, potentially legal support services up valley with mobile opportunities, because not everybody can skip a shift and drive all the way down or get on public transit to go all the way down to Napa to find out what's happening. And so the more that can be delivered up valley, where we do have a lot of our industry workforce, we need to go to them and we need to provide them trustworthy and the right information so they can feel better about things.
Look, I think information's key, but I think this is a hard problem to solve, and every situation is different, right? I can tell you, my mom's a citizen, my in-laws are not, some of my uncles are, some of my uncles are not. It's complicated, right? So to your point, there's not one solution that's out there, but the degree of fear does vary in Napa. You have some people that are living in fear, and you have some people that are living in less fear. So if that's what we're trying to do, some bold action is necessary. You're not going to solve it all, but you have to take action, and you're going to learn from it every step of the way, right? But right now, this community cannot be what it is without our community of immigrants. That's a fact, and that's a true statement, and it's acknowledged.
And I want to build on that, because the consequences of not taking action are going to go well beyond the immigrant community. You already identified how much of our local economy is completely reliant on our immigrant workforce and our immigrant community. Some of them are business owners. Yeah. Some of them are in hospitality. Some of them are in retail. Some of them are teachers. And if we lose those people in our community, there are far-reaching consequences.
Yeah.
Schools don't have children, or they don't have teachers. And could there be closures? Businesses will potentially have to close, whether they're restaurants, hotels, retail, whatever. Local serving businesses, people that live here, that have invested here, they may lose their businesses if this trickle-down effect happens, which is not just about whether somebody's legal or illegal, undocumented. It is a broader impact that it's all of our responsibility.
Look, we don't need to envision, what Napa would be like without immigrants, because it's not possible, right? Now, I do want to challenge, our Latino community as well, right? And a lot of them, some are business owners, right? When I think it was a day in action, I saw some businesses close. Don't close, right? You have a perfect opportunity where you can go to a boardroom, you can go to a city council meeting, you could call people and say, here's what we need, right? Now, I appreciate the intent of closing your store to show the impact if Latino businesses close or Latino people don't go to school, or immigrant, I shouldn't say Latino, right, to be fair. But I feel like those solutions are yesterday's. We need new solutions. Our immigrant community is part of this community. So to me, I want to challenge them to feel comfortable and confident to say, you know what, here's what would ease my fear. And I want to hear from them. And we should hear from them, right? We don't need a translator or a messenger. Tell me in your voice what you want this community to do to make sure you feel comfortable. Because guess what? This place couldn't work if it wasn't for you. So to me, I think we got to shift the paradigm. Those that want to create outcomes like hold the sign, they have a role to play, but also our immigrant population has a role to play too, which is you're at the table. Remember the old adage, if you're not on the menu, or if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. You're at the table, seated in a long, like the Last Supper table. You're there. So help us so we make sure that we ease your pain a little bit, because this community is going to have your back. We've done it. We've funded programs like we've talked about, John. But I think now the urgency is a little bit more real, where we have to shift away from the way we've always done it to, I think, new ways.
I also think Napa Valley has a unique opportunity to be a real role model and a leader well beyond our valley. What we do here matters on a much larger scale. We have an international reputation. We can show how we can support our immigrant community and it be the right, not only the right thing morally, ethically, but the right thing economically. Uh, and it would draw more people into the actual action. I think when you show them the value that is one at risk and two that will benefit this kind of collaboration. So I do think we have a moment in time where we should not just be satisfied with shouting and protesting.
Yeah.
Because while that does have a role in it and it does inspire, we need the inspiration to turn into action.
Agree. And, I do want to thank this community, right? Because we do have a history of doing the right thing. We do have a history of caring. And we are a very philanthropic community. I think we've talked about that in the previous podcast. So I don't want to make light of that. And I think what gets us so worked up is we know we can fucking do something. So let's do something different. Let's challenge ourselves. And we've hit it on the head, right? I think there's pathways to citizenship programs that got to get funded, that we got to put that on steroids and blow it up. And if we have a waiting list, God damn it, that's a good problem to have. Let's address it to make sure we don't have one, right? That's real. If you're an employer, right? Make sure your employees know you have their back. And make sure you know what you can do to help them. That's real, that you can do that today, tomorrow, and yesterday, right? And then the other one is for our government, institutions. Don't do it in the boardroom. Do it out in the community, right? Invest in outreach, invest in resources where you're reaching people, where you're not having a filter on your message. It's being relayed directly to the people you're trying to help. And then the last point is to our immigrant population. This is your community. Tell us what you need. We're here to help, right? And if you don't trust government, figure out who you trust and relay that message to them. If it's faith-based institutions, great. If it's Father Moore at St. John's, good. Whoever it is, share it so we make sure we know what we need to do.
Well, it's a hard conversation. And I will say it's an uncomfortable one for me to try to represent what should be done and for whom. Because I'm sure there's somebody listening to say, what does he know? He doesn't feel the anxiety, and he doesn't feel the pain that's been caused by the concerns that we've talked about today. But I sit here acknowledging that it's something that I haven't lived and experienced, but it doesn't mean that I'm not going to push our community to try to find new solutions that matter. And I do think our unique positions, having been in government for so many years and seeing some things that are shallow and that don't go beyond the proclamation and the supervisor or board or council meeting, but those things that did affect change, and you have resources the federal government, the state government, the local government has that can be leveraged to do things. But I just hope that we don't have proclamation after proclamation and town hall after town hall, and then people go home and say, I've done my part.
You said it best. You don't have to be an immigrant to understand an immigrant, right? The universal language is outcomes and action. So let's go, stop waiting, right? And let's meet the moment where it needs to be met with real fucking solutions.
Well, I could toast to that. Cheers.
Cheers.
So look, John, we're on the porch kind of decompressing from a very tough conversation, man. And it's personal, right? I hear the stories, right? And whether ICE is here or not, it's creating a reaction. And right now there are people that they're on their way home or about to go home after a day of work, and they don't know if they're going to get home safely. And that's happening in our valley. That's happening in the Napa Valley. And to me, we can't fix it because it's a complicated system, man. Immigration is broken. But what we can do is ease the fear of what people are facing in Napa Valley today, man. And I think we hit on some of it today. I know it's a hard conversation, but we have to take local action. Forget the federal stuff. We're not going to change that. But locally, we can do things.
And I want to learn from you about the best way that I and other folks can help, because, I don't have that same fear. I'm lucky about that. But I know that too many people in our community do feel that way.
Look, I appreciate you saying that, but it's not even from me, right? I'm going to get home okay, right? It's our ag community. It's our hospitality community, right? It's our restaurant community. We have to listen to people, right? Don't assume. Ask what we need to do to ease the fear, right? Like you talked about it, man. This community was built on immigrants. Going back to the Chinese, to the Italians, to the Mexicans, and other people from El Salvador, Guatemala, right? It's so many people that have contributed to it. I think what's different now is it's being more real. It's more in your face. And for that reason, I think the actions that we take have to match that type of intensity, that type of passion and compassion for people, like, which I know we have. Like Napa Valley has a history of doing the right thing, right? So enough of the symbolism and proclamations, and let's kick it into action that actually eases the fear of what people are facing.
I just want to acknowledge the dedication and really the life commitment that our workforce has made so that we can enjoy a few minutes out here on the porch. And it's not without a lot of sacrifice and a lot of hard work. We see it right now today in the Valley, where people are working hard. They're making a living for their families, and they are the backbone of our community.
I was driving around town today, and you saw all these cars in the vineyards, and they're pruning, right? Because that's what they're doing now. And here you and I are having this wine. And I know it's cheesy to say, but when you taste fucking good wine, it's based off the work that people are doing. And guess who's doing that work? It's not you and I, right? It's our immigrant population. And for that, that's why we have to take action. That's why it's worth challenging ourselves to do things differently. And for that, I'll cheers to you, man.
Absolutely. Cheers.